Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Wallsend history story. This week I am covering the story of the opening of the Buddle Schools. I am saying schools as they were classed as that when they opened, the Wallsend board schools, a boys' school, a girls' school and an infant school. Of course these days when we talk of the Buddle we just say school, but I hope you will find this story interesting. I am not going to go into the details of the talks and discussions on how the school came to be built, as it's such a long time ago a lot of the information is quite hard to find. So I'm just going to go straight to the opening ceremony and the description at the time of the schools, and I will end with a little further information about its later life. The only thing that I will add from before the schools were built is that the land to build on had been bought at a price of £800 per acre. The schools were officially opened on Monday, July the 30th, 1877. At the time, they were described as being in a healthy location not too far from the old village of Wallsend, which was of course what we now call the Green, and that they were also not too far away from the more populated areas of Wallsend. They were named the Buddle Schools after John Buddle, the well-known colliery engineer, which I assume everyone already knows, and of course they were located very close to where Seapit used to be. John Buddle had died in 1843, so this does show that he was someone who was still very well thought of and well remembered in the area. The buildings had been designed by Mr. John Johnson of Newcastle. His design had been chosen by the Wallsend School Board from many other plans that had been submitted. They were described as having an imposing appearance and a great contrast to their surroundings. They were built by Mr. R. Harbottle of Shielfield in Newcastle. Each school had a separate entrance. The boys and girls were both of a similar size, being 42 feet long, 35 feet wide and 21 feet high. Each had 3 large classrooms. The infant school had 2 large classrooms, but the sizes for the infant school are not actually mentioned. The building had lavatories, cloakrooms and sanitary offices which were described as being of the best kind, and the full building was heated as described at the time by hot water pipes. It was said to be built with the purpose of being light and airy, so the large windows gave lots of light to each room, which was seen as being good for the health of the pupils. There was also a large room at the centre of the building for use by the members of the board, where they would be able to hold their meetings, and the headmaster and the headmistress also had rooms where they could go to rest. Playgrounds at the time, it seems, were a bit of a novelty. These were described as being 45 feet by 25 feet, and the boys and girls are separated by a 24-foot wall. It is said that they can be used for playing ball, skipping and other things. It was said that this showed that the school board took the health of their pupils very seriously. The external walls are described as being built of freestone in the Scotch baronial style with a Welsh slate roof, and that it is very nice to look at without being overly decorated, and a very fine built building for its purpose. The builder, Mr. Harbottle, had completed the work some 3 months earlier than planned. The cost of the schools and the caretakers' houses is £8,400, and this today would be around £1,200,000. Both the boys and girls' schools will hold 200 pupils each, and the infants 375. If you work that out by today's standards, if the school was full, both these 3 classrooms for both the boys and the girls, they would be pretty busy with over 65 children in each class. The first caretaker was a man by the name of Mr. C. Swinton. This next bit of information did make me smile a little bit. It was stated that on the Monday a tolerable amount of children were brought to the school by their parents for the opening. It made me think that they didn't want too many kids there, even though it was a school. This was not like other occasions, although many prominent townspeople of the time, such as Dr. Aitchison, the Reverend W. Stead and Mr. J. Dees were present. It was not a big event with golden keys being presented like had been with buildings that I have discussed on other stories. The buildings were opened by Mr. Addison Potter at exactly 11 a.m. Speeches, of course, did take place, quite a few of them, so I will pick out a few of the things said, as most is simply the pattern on the backs of those who had done the hard work. Mr. Potter said the school board had worked hard to provide the schools for the education of the town, and that the expense to the ratepayers would, he hoped, be worth the great education of their children. He also said that he hoped the people of the town would indeed send their children to the schools, and that it would not be necessary to force them to do so. He also said that he wished to impress upon the parents the need for punctuality and cleanliness when attending the school, and that he praised those attending the day for the outstanding appearance of their children. Mr. Leslie said he felt sure that the parents of Wallsend would take advantage of these great schools for the benefit of their children. Times had changed, he said, since he was a lad, and that if he had had the advantages of today, he would no doubt be the Prime Minister of England by now. This, it seems, created great laughter among the crowds watching. The Reverend Stead said the children of Wallsend were lucky to have one of the first schools in the whole of England to have cost so much money, and that they also had some of the best teachers, one of whom had come from as far away as Scotland, and this was a lady by the name of Miss Maggie Graham. The Reverend Wilson said he hoped that the education provided at the schools would create some very great scholars, but whether any would end up as Prime Minister he was not able to say. Dr. Aitchison said he felt those children there today were some very noble specimens, and he felt that the opening of the Buddle Schools was among the greatest things to have happened in the history of Wallsend, and that they held great hope in them for the future. He also stated that the ratepayers were more than happy to see their money being spent on such a splendid set of schools. It was then the task of Mr. Potter to hand the schools over to the teachers to start their work for the children of Wallsend. Overall, it would seem that everyone was very happy and impressed with the new schools. Of course, the date stone on the school states 1876. This, of course, refers to when the schools were built rather than the 1877 date of when it was opened, just in case anyone is wondering. In 1884, 2 extra classrooms were built, one on the boys' side and one on the girls', and later a boiler room was also added. After being in use as a school for almost 100 years, the Buddle closed in 1974. By 1977 it was known as the Buddle Art Centre, and this is how I remember it, as I am too young to really remember it as a school. In February of 1986, the Buddle became a Grade 2 listed building. The Art Centre closed in around 2008, and apart from a few temporary uses, it has pretty much remained empty ever since. I am sure that many of you listening will have gone to the Buddle School, or maybe went there when it was an art centre, and I am sure you will have many memories of it, both good and bad. Of course, for those viewing it now, it is a sad sight to see. Years of not being used and standing empty have taken its toll. As a listed building, it means it's incredibly expensive to repair, so it's not something that can be easily looked after or repaired if it doesn't have a use. It has stood on the corner of Station Road for around 146 years, and we have to hope that it will soon have a new lease of life and will still be standing there in another 140 odd years from now. I hope you have enjoyed this little story, mostly about the opening of the schools, and it is somewhat slightly shorter than some of my recent ones, but I do hope that you have still found it interesting. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again very soon.